Hey everybody, welcome to West Civ Thursday, and I'm just going to do a brief lecture, about 20 minutes, on the Industrial Revolution. Part of your assignment for today, as posted in the document that I posted on Google Classroom. Watch today's video, my lecture here. Watch the other video I post from YouTube, about a 15-minute video on the Industrial Revolution, and then complete the assignment in Google Classroom. So all that should take you less than 90 minutes. If you are dedicated to it, if you're just kind of goofing around during that whole time, it's probably not the case, but we'll get right to it. You can follow along with these slides if you want. I'll post them in our classroom page so you guys can take a look at them and follow along as I go. So some general background on the Industrial Revolution. These are the key inventions that we've been talking about. The steamboat, okay, the railroad, or the steam engine there, newspapers, and the transatlantic cable, which comes a little bit later towards the end of the Industrial Revolution. Those are four things that you should be aware of in terms of the communication revolution that happens. Steamships and locomotives, they travel obviously more quickly than horses, they're more reliable. However, they're limited because a railway track only goes one direction, whereas a horse you can go in multiple. But you have to stop and rest the horse and feed it, and it has to sleep and it gets tired. Whereas a locomotive, you just put more coal in there and she keeps on going. All right, look at the rail lines in 1840. It kind of sputtered throughout France and Europe. 10 years later, pretty much all of England is covered. Just rail lines everywhere. You know, look at that difference, right? In Europe, you can see all the splinter veins that's going off in every direction. Fast forward, 1880, so another 30 years after that, and just like everything, every single city is connected by rail lines. So that's how fast it moves. It's incredibly fast. Right? This is a population chart. Look at the GDPs. Excuse me. So look at where the wealth is, where the money is, the evaluation of how wealthy countries are, or these continents. If you're looking at Europe and North America, at the year 1700, look at how much their wealth shoots up at this time period. And then look at the Asian part of the world. Starts off really high and starts dropping off. Okay, so you can see where the people are and where the money is. And the Industrial Revolution is what separates the fact that Europeans and North Americans are at the top of the curve when it comes to GDP at this stage that we are in now, versus people from Asian descent. So if you're looking at the modern revolutions, you're looking at shipping, a lot of industry in the shipping industry. India, 1877, a lot of food is moving around the world to different markets where it's being sold. All right, so that's an example there. Look at this map. This map really highlights the English Empire. All right, in pink you have the Empire of England. All right, the British Empire, where the sun never sets. So we've talked about this map before and how they keep adding territory as they go on. They lost this one. All right, this is now free. The United States, we are no longer under their thumb, but they took Canada from the French. French lost out on Canada. So you can see, obviously the Russian Empire is quite large, but all these European countries are starting to carve up Africa. And if we get back together as a class, we're going to play a really fun game called the Scramble for Africa. And we'll kind of see how this continent got subjugated there. As you can see, the migrations. People are moving around during this time frame quite substantially. Europeans are moving to the New World, and Asians are moving to the New World. A lot of this in California to work on the railroad, the Transcontinental Railroad in the United States. Africans, due to forced slavery, are moving into the New World. And so North America is being highly and heavily populated at this time. Not so much by natural births, but by the immigration. Okay, this is a classic map of how the shipping industry works. It's all focused on Britain. Okay, what happens is cotton exports from United States, Egypt, India, Russia, even China, all of their natural resources, specifically like their textiles, they are getting sent to England, where they're getting turned into clothes, and then England goes off and sells them back to where they came from. All right, this is like a similar practice that we see in today's society, but it made England very wealthy. All right, all these areas around the world that they had colonies in and controlled, they would then subjugate the people, either through their military or through taxes, whatever the case was, ship back the raw materials, make them into a refined substance, such as clothes, and then ship them back and then sell them again to the people. So they controlled the means of production there. Right? Look at the surface area of the world controlled by Europeans. 1800, 35%. Pretty, still substantial. A third of the world is under the thumb of Europeans. 1878, so almost a century later, doubles. Okay? 1914, half a century later, 88%. All right, over 3/4, almost 90%, almost 90% of the entire world is under European domination. That's incredible. That's incredible to think about. However, not too far after this date, another 50, 60 years fast forward as we get into more history, that number substantially goes down. All right, and to the point that we have now, where it's very little. All right. Then we've talked all about our government. You should recognize this from the French Revolution, our revolution in the United States, the English Glorious Revolution. We're going to skip through a lot of this and kind of go back to the Industrial Revolution. But just to give you guys a picture, I wanted to give you guys a picture of a lot of the Industrial Revolution things were happening as these guys are being kicked out of power. Okay, French Revolution, some of the causes here. We've talked about a lot of this. Tennis Court Oath, first, second, third estates. We talked about Marie Antoinette and her kids. Okay, National Assembly. We talked about Robespierre and all the bloodshed. And then we talked about here's the king getting his head cut off. Robespierre, finally he gets his head cut off. The rise of Napoleon. We talked all about Napoleon. And then we get back around to the Industrial Revolution in today's terms, in modern terms. We have the world population hanging around here, slightly going up, some dips, some bumps, and then we hit the Industrial Revolution right here, 1800. And look what happens. Absolutely skyrockets. Absolutely skyrockets. Okay? So, when you have a factory churning out hundreds and hundreds of guns or hundreds and hundreds of tables, whatever the widget is. The reason why is because population is booming at the immediate demand, and there's money to be met in that demand, all right, which makes more people wealthy. All right. If you're looking at the world population of people of European descent in Europe, the United States, Canada combined, look at the year 1750. They're at around 141 million, with about a little less than 20% of the world's population. 100 years later, all right, almost doubles, all right, or more than doubles, and you have 25% of the world's population. Okay, keep in mind that the rest of the world's population is going up as well, but specifically we're talking about European descent, United States and Canada. 1950 years after that, 30%. So it's just steadily going up. All right. All of that population increase, more and more and more, means people are buying more and more things, which means factories need to innovate faster and faster and faster. How do you ship goods quicker? How do you have them more reliable? It starts off with factories, with looms, just making clothes, all right, and other essential items, and it just booms into every single thing that you can imagine, from watches to chairs to lumber mills are revolutionized. Producing steam engines. I mean, it just takes off. All right, like I said, paper loom weaving, Lancaster, 1835. You're talking about one person running several machines at once creates efficiency. Okay. A big thing here. I'll just read. Britain. We talked about this yesterday. Their coal mines are located close to the sea. Chinese coal mines and other coal mines in the southeast of Asia are not located close to the sea. All right, coal's heavy. You gotta shovel it. Breaks your back shoveling it all day. Right? If you have to transport over land, it's a lot extra work. Whereas you can transport directly into a ship and have it sail somewhere, it's much more efficient. And that is the situation that we had in England. Interesting question here. How might history have been different if the closest source of coal available to Britain were, say, in the Carpathian Mountains of the southeastern Europe? Right? They had to go a long ways to get it, or into one of their colonies, or other areas to get it. England might have been a very different place. The world might have been a very different place. Okay? The Industrial Revolution, fossil fuel energy in production and transportation is absolutely key. Fossil fuel is usually a non-renewable energy source. Okay? So for us, and today that means coal-powered power plants, which is still in effect. You have oil, natural gas are both fossil fuels. And generally speaking, they pollute the environment quite heavily. And this is kind of like the source of contention today is countries like India and China who are going through kind of like their second industrial revolution. Whereas we've kind of already gone through our second industrial revolution in the United States. We're kind of coming out of that, and now we're into the clean energy. We're moving rapidly towards that. And so, Xcel Energy, my energy company, they email me all the time about how their goal, I think, is 2050 to be 100% clean energy. That every single power that I get out of my outlets is going to be from either wind or solar power energy. And so that's a big commitment to make. So some of the goals, I just want to make sure that we all understand the definition of the Industrial Revolution and how the inventions impacted people in society. We talked about this on Tuesday, so you should already know the answer to this question, some of the pros and cons. It's also part of today's assignment, so pay attention there. Discuss the positive and negative effects of the Industrial Revolution and their impact on people in society. Okay, so big time discussion there. That we're not going to be able to have it, so unfortunately, you're going to be working on that in our assignment that is posted. To give you guys, well, to start things off, the definition of the Industrial Revolution from your textbook is a term coined in 1799 to describe the burst of economic inventions and economic expansion that began in Britain in the late 18th century. All right, let me start you off here. Think about this. What time did you get up this morning? Okay? Maybe some of my first hour students, knowing that they had to go to class live, they slept in till 9:20 so that they can get up for their second hour or their third hour class. Or maybe even later than that because they're a snack break, so you don't start to 9:45? So maybe you're waking up at 9:30. But think about that. How did you wake up? Probably a cell phone, a lot of you, cell phone alarm. What time did you leave the home to get ready for school? Okay, that's a non-coronavirus number 3 there. Sorry. Number 4, what time does class start and end? All right, what time does lunch start and end? Look at all these things. All they're related to time. All right? Think about this. How scheduled is your life on a scale of 1 to 10? 10 is extremely scheduled. I think all of us are above a 5. If you're not above a 5, good for you. I applaud you. But generally speaking, we have just filled our days, completely packed with all kinds of things. Whether it's obviously school, sports, clubs, family events, homework, you name it, people are busy, really, really busy. You're just moving from one thing to the next all the time. And it's pretty rare that you just got to kick back and you don't have a big host of things to do. Right? It's pretty rare. So we have a very scheduled day in our society. I want to point out, this was not the case before the Industrial Revolution. All right? Your life in an agrarian society, that is a farming society, where your sole purpose is to plant crops, harvest crops, don't starve to death, and the noble protects you, and you pledge your allegiance to the noble to keep you safe and your land safe. Your life was centered around your food source and your family and surviving. It's just sustainment. So it's a whole different kind of stress than we have today, but it was not like a go type of society at all. All right? Today, it is. So it wasn't always this way, as we know, which is what I just covered. We'll skip that quote that talks about that. During the Industrial Revolution, though, things start to change, and people start to have to be on time for things, right? And so you have, there's a good picture here of England's factory system, and all the different factories that are popping out throughout London and England. And in these mills, specifically in Manchester, it's the home of Manchester United, Manchester City, two soccer teams that are very bad, not good teams at all. Arsenal beats them every time, just in case you were wondering, which I'm sure you will. You were. But Manchester is where a lot of the manufacturing in England is taking place. It's just to the north of London, and it's kind of in the middle of the island. It's in a new industrial city. It's one of the best and worst of the Industrial Revolution. Why? Because of child labor. They did have some early legislation to try to curb some of that, but a lot of it was ignored. But look at why England, we talked a little bit about this already. They had large amounts of coal, and they had iron, and they had a lot of rivers that enabled for the transportation of those products. Their banking system was also highly developed. So if you don't have a good system of commodities in terms of their value, evaluation, and how much it's worth, it's tough to trade or barter when things aren't firmly established with different values. Okay, they also had a good banking system in terms of allowing for loans. So if you were a noble, or kind of that old money, talk about Gatsby in your English class there, that old money or that nobility class, that first or second estate that France would kind of be talking about, you had that name recognition, but you maybe just didn't have loads and loads of money. Banks would maybe take your estate house that's worth millions, and you can offer up that as collateral per se on your loan to start a factory. Okay, so there was money to be had in exchange. Okay, urbanization. Some of your textbook talks about city building and the movement of people to cities. That's just people started flowing in from the countryside to get jobs. Okay, in my family we have a farm in Clearwater, and it was passed down to my grandmother, her sister, and her brother. So they took 240 acres and they split it three ways. Okay, 80, 80, 80. Everyone got like 80 acres or something like that. And then my grandmother had my mom and her two brothers, my two uncles. Well, now we're looking at our property having to split that as well. And it's like, how do you keep on splitting the property more and more and more, right? Is it going to be given just to my mom, or is it going to be half my mom, half my dad? And a lot of you and your families might be dealing with some of this as well with land. You can't just keep giving it to the whole family, because then everyone gets a smaller and smaller chunk, right? And so that's where a lot of the birthright of the firstborn son kind of the stuff comes into the picture of who controls and inherits the estate. But then that firstborn is supposed to look after the whole family and use the land to support the extended family, which can be tough. So, and obviously we've kind of gone way far away from that old system, but it still comes into play that in urbanization, this is just people saying, I'm moving away from this whole chaos into the city. I'm going to get my own job and survive on my own. Right? Living conditions are not great. They're lacking good housing, education, and police protection, which means epidemics spread just like crazy. Cholera specifically, driven by disease in the water, mostly feces. That's animal poop getting into the water. You drink it, cholera. Okay, cholera is not good. Your lifespan wasn't very long if you got it. So that's just running rampant, because there's still horses and pigs and just all kinds of farm animals roaming through the cities at this time, and they don't use toilets, and so they just go in the street, and that street gets contaminated into the drinking water of the public, and so cholera outbreaks are very common. Working conditions, not fun. Right? We've talked about some of these. 14-hour days, 6 days a week, if they were lucky. Factories are not safe. They're not well lit, so it's dark. It's hard to see. They're obviously not clean, especially the coal mines. And there's just zero government protection for these places. So the workers, while they're delighted to have a job and get pay, they don't. I would wager a lot of them don't understand the chaos that they're in, or were in at the time. Whereas we look back and we're like, oh my gosh, that's absolutely insane, right? There's just some boys here working, processing some things here. Those are young boys. All right. Positive effects did create a lot of jobs, gave people options, right? No room for them at the farm because it's getting sent down to different family members. So what are you going to do? And so it gave them an outlet. Population was exploding, so there was a need for jobs. It created lots of inventions. A lot. If you had a creative mind and could create something that could be sold or marketed, you were going to do well. It increased the standards of living, so that means that people had more money in their pockets, more money to spend, and lives were overarchingly improved. All right, the city life did get better, and standards did improve. It did take quite some time. Okay, look at the faces of some of these kids. These are some pretty hardy kids here. It's because they're like 12 and 13 years old, and they're working 14 hours a day in a coal mine. Right? I think their left hook and their right hook is pretty strong with these kids. I want to play rugby against them. That's a fact. All right. They're too short. They get up onto the assembly line. They gotta have little stools. All right. Some of the negative effects: superior technology and weapons prompts nations to acquire more territory. All right. Those with weapons start taking over. We're gonna see some trends with that. Ideas of imperialism start getting just driven into Europeans' minds about superiority. And so that does not help the racial ideas there. Child labor, as we've been talking about, and the factory conditions. So all negative effects there. You can straight maneuver these right into your assignment. Okay? Look at these kids working at a bowling alley, setting up the bowling pins. Look at this girl working at the looms. Okay, so here's the question: is the Industrial Revolution progressive time that demonstrated human creativity, or was it born out of human greed and exploitation of others less fortunate? Is there always a price to pay in human suffering for civilization to have progress? It's a very interesting question. Okay, but rise above the fray. What is the other option, or what's the higher ground that maybe isn't seen? Whereas this seems like a dichotomy, right? It's either one way or the other. But is there another way to answer this question? Have we arrived at the answer in our modern economy to this question? Does the progress we have today in society, is that always born out of greed and suffering, but it allows us to progress? Is it like a necessary evil? Or does some of the ideas that we have today that are taking shape not have those negative effects and are for the good of society and are not born out of greed? I think to a large extent, you have to really ask yourself that question. And obviously it depends on a product-to-product basis. But nonetheless, I think it's a good question to ask. All right. Oh, the Russian Revolution. I cannot wait to get into the Russian Revolution, but we can't. Tsar Nicholas II and his family. Anastasia, she's one of them. I don't know which one. Oh, man. You guys, very excited for what's to come. But, again, I miss you. I miss you guys, so I thought I'd come into the classroom and give my lecture here because it'd be a good space to do that. I'm praying for you guys every day, and I love you very deeply, and I hope that you guys are hanging in there. And, I can't wait to get back into the class and just hang out and have fun. So, with that being said, watch the other video I posted on Google Classroom, Crash Course History video, and then get the assignment done by midnight tonight. And other than that, you guys have a great weekend. I'll post the instructions for next week on Monday, and we'll go from there. All right, see you guys.